Hello, Alex. Could you please introduce yourself and what you do? And thanks for coming, by the way.
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name is Alex Gladstein. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at the Human Rights Foundation. I've been working there since 2007. We are a nonprofit that exists to help people who live under authoritarian regimes around the world. And by our metrics, that accounts for a staggering majority of the world population that doesn't have access to things like independent courts and free speech, property rights, things like this, freedom of association, freedom of belief. Um, as many as 6+ billion people lack those freedoms in an obvious way. I don't think anyone fully has them, right? But, let's say there's billions of people trapped under one party states where opposition political parties are illegal, where entire categories of speech and use of technology is completely illegal, and where dissent is essentially illegal. So we exist to try and help the change makers in those societies in peaceful ways, and we do that through a variety of techniques. Some of them include events. The Oslo Freedom Forum is our big festival. We do many kinds of events to bring together people who want to deploy capital to make the world better, people who are developing technology and software to help the average person achieve more freedom, and the brave dissidents on the front lines who are spreading that kind of expertise and knowledge. We also do education. We help uh, these dissidents learn how to use the best tools of today, whether that be anything from mental health um, improvements that they can do to, again, different open source technology, um, whatever they can do to increase their chances of success against all odds. We also have a legal team, the considerable one, and we kind of put pressure on and participate in lawsuits and put legal pressure on different international bodies to help secure people from prison. So we help get prisoners of conscience out of jail. So we have a bunch of different things we're doing, and I've spent my career in a big way in the technology side of things. When I first started, I was helping get internet into countries that didn't have it, in as much as maybe not the full internet, but pieces of the internet. So we were helping support the Cuban Underground Library movement before the island had internet, and North Korea as well, getting different kinds of information into North Korea using surreptitious ways. Um, Later, I got involved with the encryption from a secure messaging point of view. Before 2014, it was rare because there was no iPhone signal version yet. So it was like most activists just used plain text, but I saw over that decade, pretty much all of them use some kind of encryption now. So I saw that happen. We helped it with that. We help check people's phones for spyware using partnerships with groups like Citizen Lab. And the thing I'm probably most known for is Bitcoin, because we noticed that almost every activist under dictatorship can't use money in the right way. Their money sucks. It's inflated. It suffers from a collapse of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% in a year against the dollar. They can't use it to buy things abroad. It gets seized. Their bank accounts are monitored or frozen or completely taken away from them. And the fiat currency system just doesn't really work for activists under dictatorships. You can't like wire them money. A lot of people don't understand this because they have financial privilege in the West and they don't get it. So I've really been working on that. And I'm proud to say that probably today, like a very significant percentage of human rights activists around the world now use Bitcoin. And that's at least one thing that can't be stopped. So in the last couple of years, our attention has been moved to AI. And, in that spirit, we want to see the same idea where if people can control their own communications and beliefs, and if they can control their money, they should be able to control their intelligence too.
The AI topic is very relevant to me. At least that's something that I'm thinking of most of the time. It's like partly my career. Um, but I'm really interested in like the whole arc of what you've done over the last 10 years. How because it seems like you're doing a whole bunch of different things, right? Like all of it falls under the category of helping dissidents and helping with authoritarianism, getting people out of that. How do you approach these like new, I guess, side quests or like missions or
Yeah.
yeah? How do you approach this?
Well, I would say the first, if I've been doing this for almost 20 years, I mean, the first decade, I was just learning how, essentially how to grow a nonprofit, how to grow a movement. And I was meeting and learning from the World's Dissident Network, learning about what challenges they had, what did they have, what did they not have. What they have in surplus is, of course, bravery and persistence and an indefatigable, you know, um, drive and will to see their people free. I mean, this is what they have an infinite, essentially, reservoir of. What did they lack? Funds. There's just so little money for freedom work around the world, and you see this drawn out in the AI space as well when you compare like what's available for corporate versus kind of like DIY AI, right? But this is the one big area that they suffer at fundraising. They're not very good at it. They really shouldn't be wasting their time with it anyway. But it's a brutal reality of their job that they need it to pay people and to grow their organizations. So that was something they generally speaking aren't great at. Communications and understanding how the modern media works is a big one. I mean, some of them have some sort of natural gift for it, but a lot of them just don't understand it. A lot of them are not good with technology and not good with security. So I started to learn about what were their strengths and weaknesses, and then how we could help. Um, and then I got very taken by Bitcoin because I don't know, a lot of activism is virtue signaling, right? It's like, oh, free this country on Twitter or whatever. I mean, what's that really going to do? But if you could teach somebody who's thousands of miles away how to secure their wages and the fruit of their labor in a way that no one could steal from them and that couldn't be inflated, I mean, that's a significant upgrade in their personal freedom. And I was able to see that and help people everywhere from Cuba to Gaza to Hong Kong. I mean, you name it. It doesn't matter where somebody is. I was able to help and research and interact with and explore and meet people from almost every country involved in this revolution, the peaceful revolution. That was really inspiring to me. Because otherwise it's very easy to get jaded because despite mankind's obvious and considerable advancements, generally speaking, in terms of things like technology and life expectancy and industrialization and things like that. Repression remains kind of shocking, right? And a lot of the inequities and exploitation in the world remains very shocking. Um, so to be able to actually work on something that could allow people to empower themselves is really really moving to me, and that is what's really inspired me. So I just I can't imagine that there's that many moments like this in history, like being there for, and we're still at the beginning of Bitcoin, in my opinion, but being there for the beginning of that and helping people understand that and become experts in that was incredibly rewarding and inspiring. But if anything, the AI stuff is even crazier. And it's wild to be around for like almost like a 10-year period of time where both things are happening at once. And this has been a really crazy ride. Um, but it's different, like, because Bitcoin is like, it's hard to understand, it's very alien, it's different. It takes years for people to really grok it, and there's never like really one moment, right, where you're like, oh wow. It took me a lot of time to work through why it was useful, why it was a human rights tool, why it was different from Dogecoin. Like it took me a long time to grok these things, whereas with, at least with, in the last 6 months, like with personal agents, like I think it's very different from like a year ago. But when you introduce someone to a personal agent for the first time, within minutes, it's amazing. I mean, it's like, it's really moving. It's like being with someone when they use an email for the first time. And people cry, they laugh, they are shocked, they can't believe it. Um, so that's the thing I think my organization hopefully should be doing the most is focusing on the education piece because it's kind of like with Bitcoin. Yes, Bitcoin has scaling technological challenges for sure. And it has a lot of decentralization work to do. And these are things that people are working on. But what like very few people are doing is education with Bitcoin. That there's like almost no money compared to like how much is available for open source developers even. There's quite a bit, right? You want to go into Bitcoin, there's a lot of opportunities, or at least a lot more than there was 5 years ago. So same thing with AI. Like if you want to work on open source AI projects, there's actually quite a bit of activity. And um, especially if you're willing to pick a side or pick a team or pick a project, there may be a lot of activity, but there's not a lot of you know, let's take the average person and teach them how to like build their own agent and do their own thing. There's just not a lot of funding for that or like movements for that. So I do feel like that's where I'd like us to focus.
Well, this is actually very interesting. So I'm not trying to shill this. I'm just trying to walk you through the logic that I've had over the last month. I've met
Yeah.
like so in I was in San Francisco, and this is when the Fable model was pulled off the internet
Yeah.
for because of the like export control. We started it like, I mean, someone else started a movement called Freedom of Intelligence. So we went to this first event. There were like regulators from Texas. Wall Street Journal was there. There were a few like organizations. There were people from a bunch of different places. But the conversations like, how do we secure our ability to access intelligence into the future? This is the most common issue that I'm hearing right now is that the US government hears like two voices in the room. There is the people that don't like the data centers, that feel like AI is destroying their cities, that it's burning up all the water, right? Like there's that crowd of people. Then there's the giant enterprise American companies who are their own can of worms. And there's no one really on like the national level, just like normal people that are saying, well, this actually helps with business development. This helps with running meetups. This helps with libraries, whatever it is, something that is a public good. What I wanted to do is actually take a few sparks and go to different public libraries, schools, colleges, and essentially do like a lesson of like, hey, here's how you stack these things together. Here's how you get an agent. Here's what an agent can do for your organization, or for your classroom or whatever. Because I agree with you. It's like everybody that is in the AI sphere, it's sort of like a crypto bubble. When we have the crypto like ups and downs, when we're in a bull market, everybody's building crypto stuff. And really, we should be building products that help the average person, or like are useful in some way other than inflating like the value of the thing. I'm not sure if this makes sense, but I'm
Yeah.
kind of worried that we are getting into this like game of chicken where we're going to start shutting off international access to intelligence. And the fact that these things are so smart is concerning, because if a company is able to like use 10,000 copies of this, and they can just like suck all the alpha out of every room over a long enough time span, at least. So it's something that is concerning to me, and I want to learn basically from you. Maybe you take some time to like tell me how you would approach this if this was, because it is something that you're doing.
Yeah. Well, thank you for leading the way here on people being able to run their own intelligence. I think it's super important. I think a lot about the transformation of the personal computer, right? That I was kind of around for the tail end for as I'm 40, right? So when I was a kid, I was around for, we had the beginnings of the internet. We had like a, 28K modem. We could do stuff on our own, right? And as a child of the internet in the 90s, there was stuff going on TV where people were making fun of the internet, that it was a fad and stuff. And I was like, no, 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 this is, what am I going to do? Go back to not having the internet? That's crazy. Um, so I felt like, I felt a little bit like that with Bitcoin over time. I'm like, what do you mean? What am I going to go back to using a bank wire? What are you insane? But but it's much more so widespread with AI, right? It's like you know your plumber's using it. Like this isn't. It might be a bubble in some aspects. There's clearly going to be ups and downs in the economy, but this isn't. We're not putting the genie back in the bottle here. That should be obvious. So once you accept that, like once you, if you were in the 80s and once you would accept that computing was going to change the world, then you would have to think about, okay, well, how can we protect freedom? And that's what the cypherpunks did, right? They acknowledged by the late 80s, early 90s that this was going to happen, and then they started to think, well, how could we turn it to our advantage, right? And that was with cryptography, right? So, hey, you know, clearly it's bad that governments are going to have these enormous databases and they're going to control the networks that connect people. But maybe we could have some upsides here. So they literally invented ways for people to have secrets and share them around the world for the first time in history. So I think, you know, it's going to be a similar thing here, where clearly there are negatives to the AI revolution, right? In terms of the combination of power, where you have a government that has hundreds of millions of physical cameras and and knowledge of and insight into mobile phones and devices combined with big data analysis. I mean, we knew this 10 years ago in China. We saw what they were doing, right? So there's that risk. We all know it. No one should say that this is purely good. But on the other hand, I mean, I just can't shake being optimistic, like whether it be education, where you have hundreds of millions of kids who have the worst education in the world today. I mean, just terrible education in a variety of ways. And like there's a realistic path to them. A lot, but a lot of them have smartphones, and it's like there's a realistic path to them having like a AI tutor that is like really good, that knows them, that knows how to get the most out of them in a way that a human teacher there's no economy there for that to make sense. You're not going to have 10-person classrooms with teachers who are extremely good at their jobs and available to be there for that child for their whole time. It's just not going to happen. I mean, even in rich countries, it's hard to do. Whereas, I mean, a personalized AI tutor, you could see it. You could see it. And I think there's entrepreneurs here who are going to help that make that happen. But it's like one thing is having YouTube, but another thing is having someone to really be there for you. Medicine's the same way. It's like one thing is having, yeah, like here's how you make yourself healthier. Another thing is having like a persistent presence in your life that's telling you to do so, right? It's like, and then I think it's similar with freedom. It's like it can make things easier, right? A lot of the interesting parts about freedom tech have been a little tough to use in the last half decade. You want to be a self-sovereign Bitcoin user and run your own Lightning node and things like that. It's a little tricky. I do think these agents will make it easier. I mean, in some ways, they're going to do that work, right? Like, what if humans were never meant to manage lightning channels? Like, what if that's just what your agent's going to do for you, and you're going to enjoy self-sovereign Bitcoin, right? So I think a lot of the like messy foundational work of freedom technologies, these agents are going to really help us with, and kind of really pull together some of the things that were preventing a like a last mile solution uh, for a successful product in a bunch of different fields. Again, whether it be education or health or freedom, I think you're going to see that, and it's just very exciting. And again, we have to be sober about the risks here. But if you're talking about the widespread democratization of even Opus level intelligence on existing hardware for hundreds of millions of people in the next 2 years. Um, if you're talking about maybe a world where a company like Meta has a product like WhatsApp, and maybe in the same way that they did add end-to-end encryption, right, in a mix of pressure, but also liability stuff for business reasons, maybe they add a way for every single WhatsApp user to have an on device AI assistant that's local. Like, you can start to see it, right? So the question is, how do we spend our time today so we have the least regrets in 10 years? about what we did in this moment, this very important moment, right? I always ask myself that for Bitcoin. I'm like, well, in 2030, 2035, and it's like, well, I should be educating more people if I can. So for AI, I think this is such an important 12 months, right? It's like 12 to 18 months here. So what can we do to help people understand the importance of local AI and sovereign AI and even for now, just privacy protecting AI? Like we're super into TEE stuff. Like it's a really important bridge for the moment. Um, it's like kind of necessary just because the average person can't run GLM 5.2. Like you just can't unless you have 100 grand or whatever, right? But you can rent something that's cryptographically secure and you can have access to it and you can even pay in eCash or Lightning for it. Today, Routster, um, uh, just a couple hours ago, announced that they now have TE, which is super cool, which means you can pay in eCash for privacy protecting frontier AI, which is really wild. So, anyway, TLDR, I'm very sober about the risks, but also wildly excited about, the upside here of just getting this power into the hands of as many people as possible.
I'm super excited. I think it's like the ultimate package. I mean, it comes with everything. So I have my own I have my own Tor setup. I have my own crypto setup. I have
Hmm.
the BitTorrent and like all my media, and I just have an agent managing all of it. Right? It's like, hey, go fetch
Exactly.
me this. And, like it because this stuff was like maybe it's not like too difficult to understand for me, but it was just too much. There's too many of them, and just having something on your machine that can actually manage all of it is incredible. There's a huge gap though. Like most people are still in the chatbot phase
Of course.
if they've gotten onboarded, and like getting them into this next phase requires some creativity from their part. Like how do they want to improve their lives? And there aren't many of these like packages where people can just subscribe to a package and just get like the best healthcare, right? Or like a healthcare tutor, or whatever it is that you want to do. And I imagine like the philosophers of old times, they all had like private tutors. Like there was always somebody like teaching them how to do everything from hunting to fishing to thinking, and that created some of the greatest minds in the world. But you're right, like people don't have access to that. Either they're in countries where 50 people are in a single class, or they are in countries where like the education, like in the United States, where it's not been the greatest compared to even Europe. Um, so like my concern mainly is that the way that we focused internally in the States on scaling was these frontier labs purchasing more and more hardware and basically getting the models to be larger, finding more data. And there has been not much work in terms of efficiency for the end consumer. So if you are paying whatever $5 and $15 or $3, $15, like an Anthropic or a GPT-5 subscription, and they're losing money on that, clearly, if you're using the agents. Isn't it more beneficial for them to focus on servicing governments and large corporations and figuring out how to get the consumers off because they don't benefit from me sitting there all day running these like loops, taking advantage of these subsidies.
I mean, look, I think you have to figure out your highest leverage point. Um, there are going to be people who want to go to DC and move to DC and lobby the government, and sue the government or coax the government or through a series of meetings of policymakers and lobbyists, encourage the government to take a more pro sovereign AI stance. And I applaud those people and I'll support those people. I'm not going to be one of those people. Like, I'm not going to go to the swamp. I do want to point out that the cypherpunks of the 90s realized that legal action and activism was very important. I mean, clearly their North Star was, we're going to write code, right? And ask for forgiveness later. But they ended up, if you listen to Phil Zimmerman, like PGP creator, like 10 years later, he was like, hey, like in the era of the war on terror and the Patriot Act, like activism is very important. Like legal activism is very important. So you look at the EFF and, not to comment on what they're doing today, but generally speaking, the EFF was a very successful and important organization from the mid 90s to the mid 2010s, at least. And the way they evolved was, I mean, they were very, very technical at first, and they ended up becoming essentially a place where people would sue the government over like overreach. So I do think there's a place for people of all different kinds of expertise. And if you have a legal background, or if you're DC or you're in policy, I think we need a lot of help to encourage and educate policymakers that America should be a place for people to run sovereign AI, and American companies should be encouraged, you know, through whatever means necessary to release their models with open weights. And there should be a framework for that, and it should basically be like a space race. That is undeniable that that would have a huge impact, and there's some people I know that are working on that. Awesome. That's not what I'm going to do, because my job is not necessarily to focus on the U.S. My day job, day job is to focus on, like, billions of people who live under authoritarian regimes. So unfortunately, they're not going to have the opportunity to have a dialogue with their government where they can encourage their government to be more open, like over time. Like, I know we have this weird paradox with China right now, but like, let's be real. Like, long term, dictatorships are not going to be friendly to democratized open weight AI, right? They're going to want control. Um, so it has to be code first in that scenario.
I see.
It has to be. So we're going to be focusing on educating people at first, the prominent human rights defenders who have big networks under them. Um, and that's how we did Bitcoin, right? We took the leader of a movement in a particular country, we helped them understand how to use Bitcoin, and then like they figured out their own use case, and then they educated 100 people, who then educated 10,000 people, who then educated 100,000 people. So you want to go to like leaders of movements, show them what's possible. So we're good at that. So we're going to do that. And that's what I'm focused on for the next 6 to 12 months, is like as many leaders of movements as possible. I want to get them a personal agent. I want to make sure that at least it has a private mode of some kind with TEE. I want to make sure they're not putting sensitive stuff into Anthropic or Telegram. And these are real technical challenges, because the easiest way to do this today is to have these loopholes where it's like, even if you're running a custom Hermes, it's like, honestly, Telegram's the easiest and best way to talk to it right now. So we need to have an app on your iPhone that is just as clean and good, and isn't sending your stuff in plain text to some server, right? That you don't control. So there's like UX, user facing challenges. There's also privacy challenges. But my immediate goal is to like just get these people to understand what a personal agent is and use it, um, and start developing that muscle. Even if they're doing silly stuff with it, it doesn't matter. Like, they need to be leading the frontier of the revolution here, in the vanguard. Like, because that's how we make sure we're going in the right direction. They can't be like coming in 5 years and being like, oh, this whole thing passed them by, and then they're learning. So my goal is to make human rights defenders and dissidents be part of the bleeding edge of the AI revolution. That's like my personal goal. That's what I'm going to focus on. But there's a lot of corollaries and like ways that may also help other movements in other countries, and other broader educational efforts, right? Like you're saying you want schools and libraries and local communities to be at the frontier edge too. Let's go. I think that's awesome. And I think that this is essentially the same thing. It's just slightly different audiences, right?
No, this is very, very good. I'm just operating on impulse, and it's good for me to sit with people who've already done, what I think should be done, and to hear back from their experiences. So you're trying to focus on education, and yeah, this is an amazing chart.
Can,
I'm
can
gonna
you
leave
see
it up to
this?
you. Yeah, yeah, please
Yeah.
share.
So, well, this is an up. I whatever. I had my we have a at Href, we've worked with a company called Finite to create like a custom version of Hermes that is like a little product that's activist focused, based on the last we started doing it in February, so not that many months, but about as long as you could have been doing it, let's say. Um, First we were using OpenClaw, and then we moved to Hermes, and then we've made our own version of it, and now it's on a TEE. So my TEE GLM 5.2 made this yesterday. So this is like an updated version of the chart that you see all the time. So this is through June 2026. So each dot here is 3.3 million people. It's 8.3 billion humans. And here's the key, essentially, that the gray is like people who've never used AI. Green is free chatbot users, and that might include like stuff through Gmail or whatever. And then yellow is people who pay $8 to $20 a month for AI, and red is like someone who uses a coding scaffold or an agent, right? So we're talking like probably maximum 20 to 30 million people who are at the bleeding edge out of 8.3 billion. So very early. But at the same time, as we both know, like generally speaking, chatbots are the fastest growing technology in human history, right? So there's, you would think agents are gonna pick up the speed here as they start to get more ability to reach people. And that's why I don't know, it's weird. I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel bullish because like Apple as a company has the ability to really lead the way on this in a positive direction. Like, like Siri has always been essentially retarded, right? It doesn't really do anything. And now it's going to do stuff. Like Siri is going to be really good because it's going to be AI powered. And it might be at least mostly local or somewhat local, and like that is so bullish that Apple could lead the way there. And again, same thing with WhatsApp. Like maybe there's a world where when WhatsApp gets into the game, like why wouldn't they want to just use free compute on the user's device? Do you know what I mean? There's this interesting economic market outcome here that's possible where like running servers for inference in democracies becomes politically hard. Like there is this growing movement against data centers. I think it's as dumb as the movement against Bitcoin, by the way. But like, let's put that aside. The fact is it's real, it exists, it's growing. They don't want data centers for whatever reason. It's a real thing. And in dictatorships, it doesn't matter because the government can just arrest you. But like in democracies, like there's going to be this real movement against data centers in my community, NIMBY, NIMBYism. So if we learn anything from the anti-nuclear movement is that these dumb movements can persist for decades and they can ruin very important technologies for human thriving. I mean, look at Germany. Unbelievable what they've done with going backwards in time and becoming primitive and medieval with their energy production, and now they're totally dependent on Russia, as opposed to being sovereign and nuclear powered because of these NIMBYist, very juvenile ideologies. Now they're completely dependent on a dictatorship and on fossil fuels. I mean, it's unbelievable. But that's the route they chose, right? So we have to learn from history and understand that this may happen again with data centers and stuff. So look, I think there's a world where like in the outcome where it's hard to expand and raise money for these data centers, that inference, of course training has to be there for now. I mean, it could change, but inference could shift. I mean, what if inference in the next 2 3 years starts to become 10, 20, 30, 40% running locally, right? Like it would solve a lot of problems for a lot of people. And the reason why I would be bullish about it is that it's not altruistic. Altruism is not going to fix the world. There has to be an alignment of incentives, right? And that's why Bitcoin works, is because people use Bitcoin not to help other people or be good. They use it to protect themselves and to make sure they can't be rugged, right? And in doing so, they start to participate in this more fair system for everyone. But they're not using Bitcoin to help somebody else. That's an outcome of their decision. That's an individualistic decision. That's why it works. So it's kind of like I call it like a machine that turns greed into freedom for other people. That's like a reductionist way of looking at it. But I think for AI, you're going to have something similar, maybe where companies are driven by pure market decisions, or even maybe policy decisions to offload inference locally. And then maybe you have this surprisingly good outcome where, more and more compute is done on your device. And we're clearly heading that direction technologically. Um, I mean, I thought there was a great post yesterday by the guys at Tiny Grad, like they're like, it might be a bubble, but it's not a bubble. Like this technology is gonna spread so deeply into society that you'll be running Mythos type models in 2, 3, 4 years on a laptop, and you'll be training them in 6 years on a laptop. And the more inference and training we can do on local hardware, clearly the better for freedom and civil liberties and access and democratization. And you know, the possibility that this is a positive revolution for freedom. But also it would relieve a lot of stress on these big companies in some ways. They're in
Yes.
this mad race for compute right now, and like that's not really what they do well, right? Like what they do well is create beautiful, like, robots basically. They don't, they're probably, if you got a job at like OpenAI when it first started, you probably weren't thinking, oh, I'm going to be like dealing with this like natural gas plant in Wyoming, and I'm going to have to go there and learn about that. Like that's probably not what you like that's probably not what you were signed up for, right? You see what I'm getting at? It's like it's kind of funny.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, the Tiny Grad post was very helpful because I'm sitting on Twitter a lot, and I think the negativity seeps in, and it's hard to tell like what is in my head versus what is real. And I think it makes sense that things just get better over time. And this has been the trend in my lifetime. I mean, everything is easier now. I just have technology all over
Yeah,
the place.
but we have to be careful. We have to make sure that it's, look, everybody always trades comfort for convenience. Rather, everybody always trades convenience for freedom, and they trade privacy for comfort, right? This is just what people do naturally. So we have to be careful here and make sure that we don't just become dependent on these corporate stacks. Um, and that's why I thought the OpenClaw thing was such a big deal when it happened in early February, late January, early February, because it just kind of derailed the train. And the train was moving at that time towards like you had your Google account, and that's how you accessed AI. Was like you had to sign in on Google, and then that's how you'd have your AI, or you'd sign in on Meta or Apple or whatever, and that would be your AI experience, and it would be like a silo, and you couldn't move it to over here, and it just completely shattered that. Even if it was like a small part of the overall ecosystem, it made it possible for people to choose their intelligence, right? Even in like a rudimentary way. And that was just so massive and historic. I still think so. And now we have that other route, right? And now it's up to us to make sure it's popularized. And it's kind of the question of the day. Like, can people choose their own intelligence in 5 years? Like, what does that look like, right?
So, what have you seen consistently work to get the point across to people? Because you say you look for these high caliber people that are already like doing something well,
Yeah.
and then you teach them, and then hopefully they teach other people, and you spread it that way. But how do you convince them? So I think yesterday I tried to onboard my wife onto Hermes. I set up a Hermes agent. We tried
Yeah.
Signal because we use Signal.
Yeah.
Signal
Yeah.
is not great for
No.
the Hermes experience. So we set up a Discord, and I know like
Hmm.
Discord is like definitely spyware. I mean, it's
Sure.
not a conversation. Um,
No, but you
but
have to start somewhere.
yes, yes, and so I actually came across the issues that you mentioned, mainly the issue with not having like a peer-to-peer decentralized way of doing this AI experience. The entire
Yes.
like peer-to-peer AI experience is not really developed at this point. But what
Yeah.
has worked consistently for onboarding people?
It honestly, it starts super small, and I think that's okay. You got to do it the right way, and I think we will find ways to scale it over time. But what has worked for us is in-person small experiences. We call them agent camps, and it it really makes a difference. Like someone who's skeptical, or like they've only used ChatGPT or whatever, you give us 36 hours. Um, we put them in a room with 8 or 9 other campers, and you've got 4 teachers, and our teachers are a mix of importantly, we do have 2 engineers, but we basically have 4 people or archetypes of person for each agent camp. So if there's 10 campers who come from different backgrounds, and you're in a place for 2 days, It's 3 sessions, morning, afternoon, morning. We spend time together. We do outings. We have meals together. We get to know each other. But really, at the end of the day, it's four archetypes of teachers. Um, One is like, let's say, a privacy security engineer. One is like a local AI benchmark guy like yourself. Um, One is a designer, and one is an educator, like a professional educator. And that's what we have with Finite. It's awesome. Like one of the guys is he's like a teacher. He's a former professor, teacher, high school teacher, taught computer science. One of them is a literal graphic designer, um, product designer. One of them is a local benchmark guy, and one of them is a someone who's worked on privacy and security on like basically like mobile applications. So together, and but they're all really good at talking to people and being empathetic towards their concerns and interests. And essentially, you just get them going, and we've been iterating with it. But it's like as a group activity, like you do the simplest stuff first. Like I think we start with just like make a website, and obviously people have been doing that for a year and a half now with like Lovable or Replit or whatever, and it's not that novel at all. But a lot of people haven't done it yet. A lot of people still haven't done it yet, and it's cool to do it on your own terms with your own agent. And I think especially what ends up being shocking to people still, and again, a lot of people listening to this are going to be like, "Are you kidding? Like I did that a year and a half ago. It's no big deal." But a lot of people still haven't spoken to a computer with their words and have it execute something complex in one shot. You would say 99% of humanity hasn't done that yet, so they haven't had that magic moment, right? Right. And for them, when they're just like "Hi," and they're just leaving a voice note, and they're just like, or on their Mac or whatever, and they're like, build this website. I want this and that and this and that, and we teach them just to just add more detail. The more detail you can add to your prompt, the better, and then let it rip. And then when it comes back like 20 seconds later or 60 seconds or 90 seconds later with the finished project, like their jaw just hits the floor. And then they're in, right? Then they're just like, "Oh my God." So I think it has to be through demonstration. Like, you have to use it. You can't, it's very similar to some other technologies. You can't, I mean, I keep going back to Bitcoin, but it's a similar idea. Like if you've never used it, you should not be qualified to write about it. You shouldn't. And all of these mainstream media journalists for the last 15 years have been writing about Bitcoin as something that's dangerous for the world and only used by criminals. And it's like none of them have like used it to send a remittance to like their family in another country and understood how much easier it is and how empowering it is, right? To not have to deal with corporations or third parties. It's the same idea. Like all these people who've only used ChatGPT and all they're thinking about is like, man, these people are harvesting all this information and I'm trapped in this corporate bubble. If they've never used like a basically a freedom first personal agent, again, which I understand is something we're working on is not widespread yet, but if they've never used one of these things, or like if you're logged in on our app, the inference is GLM 5.2 TEE. And if, as long as you're using our progressive web app or our app, there's no third parties, there's no corporations. Um, we are running the Hermes server, but we're almost done putting it like within a week or two, it'll be inside the TEE. So it's like there's nobody there. It's just you. It's you and your intelligence and you and yourself. And I think that that's really profound. So it is unfortunately something that has to be done by physical demonstration, I think, at this point. I'm not quite sold that you can do webinars yet. Everybody keeps asking me because like everybody wants an agent, and I'm just like, I can't just give it to you. It's kind of like if I gave you Bitcoin and you didn't know about it, you would just lose it. You'd lose it. This is what happens. So I'm hoping that by the end of the year we have a more robust way to like do 100 people at a time on like a webinar. Um, but a lot of it is like if you are not a technical person, running one of these agents is such a pain in the ass. Like it's gotten a lot better. Like when I started with my OpenClaw, I built my own computer in the 90s, right? But I'm not an engineer. So like there was a moment in the early February where like Opus 4.6 was just like unbelievable and the OpenClaw worked so well with it. And then they started to nerf it and then they took it off, right? And then there was like 2 months there where it just sucked. It just couldn't function at all. And I was really getting depressed. And I spent more time fixing it than using it. And then like our guys figured out this Hermes situation, and it's just like it never breaks. It always works. Like I haven't had a serious issue with it since May. It just is always on. It always does what I ask it to do. Sometimes I won't get the best outcome, but like it's never frozen. Like I don't deal with problems anymore. And it's kind of like an amazing speed run of like what many technologies took 10 years. Like we just speed ran that in like 3 months. Like we went from like a personal agent being this like huge pain in the ass where like like you're like what error is this, and I think you're still encountering it in the OpenClaw space. Like I love the OpenClaw guys, but like the app they released is not workable. Sorry, it's just it's like the for the mobile app, it just doesn't work. So you get you're still seeing that same struggle. But if you can get the magic of the experience, which I first had with OpenClaw, and if you can make it sustainable over months of use with no errors, that's where you win, right? It has to be like that. It has to work. It cannot go down. It can't have errors, right? So I think this is where you saw the popularization of the personal computer, right? Like turn from a hobbyist project in the 90s to being on everybody's phones. Yeah, it's because your iPhone doesn't just like give you a mysterious kernel error. Like, as a kid of my generation in the 90s when I was running Windows, like sometimes my computer would just crash. And it's just like, what? Like, and that was a fact of life. But that doesn't happen anymore, right? It's like, so we've speed run that to the point where these agents, now again, we're only servicing like dozens and dozens of people. We're not servicing thousands or millions, but like if you can have your product, let's talk about like let's say your wife, like if her agent, like if she never has to deal with any nonsense and it just works all the time, she's going to use it a lot more. Does that make sense?
No, no, I fully agree. No, I fully agree with this. I mean, because yesterday when I started like this experience, I have my own Hermes set up on a Mac Mini, and I had it like for months. I was dealing with all the issues. I got it to
Yeah.
perfect, but it's my own Hermes.
Right.
I set up this other one that is all self-hosted. So instead of having like, because my Hermes is just like a mix of stuff, but it was self-hosted. But like now I have to deal with all the issues on this computer. Once that's settled, I think it makes more sense. But it's still like there's a million things that you need to do in the modern age of whatever. If you live in multiple countries, you have to get all the paperwork right, all the taxes. You have to contact people
Sure.
who can deal with it, and all this is like exactly what the agents are great at. Like they can take
So
these
good.
complicated situations, break them down, and execute. And I'm very excited. I mean, I'm very excited, and I'm very grateful for your support. I wanted to make that clear. I just want to make sure that I can help as much people as possible because I feel like this is really great technology. It
Well,
makes me feel like a child again.
I mean, two things. Like one, I hope more people can support the open source, open weight community. There's very few people doing it right now, sadly. Um, I mean, every major university worth its salt should be deploying millions of dollars into this right now from a research perspective. And I saw that like one university was supporting the OpenClaw Foundation, like maybe Michigan, but like they all should be supporting this for educational purposes, and they're not. And we'll see if that gap closes. But more philanthropists need to be getting involved for sure because there's so many people like you who could do amazing stuff, and they just need more capital. Um, but then also, like I would just say that yeah, we're heading in the right direction. Like it is really crazy that even back in uh, late May, when we first got our TE going with our agents that we're using with these activists, when we first got the privacy mode going, I moved over from what we were using at the time was Sonnet 4.6. I moved over to Kimi K26 and I never moved back. Like I just didn't need to. It just worked. It worked just as well. I mean, maybe not quite perfectly as well, but like I never had an issue. I never had a situation where like it couldn't do what I wanted it to do. Now I have different needs than someone who's building a mobile app for a million users, certainly. So like, but like my needs are much closer to the needs of the average person than as someone who needs to build a stable, secure mobile app for a million people. Like my needs are much more about like optimizing my life, like marketing stuff, like design stuff, like research briefs. Like this is like much more similar to the average worker in the knowledge economy than like needing to engineer something that 10 million people are going to use and rely on. So it just worked. And then now we have GLM 5.2. It's it's even better. It's like it's at least as good as Opus 4.6 was, right? Just a couple months later. It's so impressive. Like one of the interesting things about it is it has no vision, and you'll know more about this than me. But like it can't really. So what we have it do, we have it use another model locally to do the vision. Like we have a bunch of Sparks we bought, and it's kind of cool. It like defaults to a local model that we're running for our product, at least for our users, to do the vision piece, and then it comes back to GLM. So there's just all these cool ways you can architect these systems. It's really exciting. So again, my goal is like by the end of the year, we've got the leaders of hundreds of very important human rights and dissident groups, environmental groups, whatever, worldwide that are in our network agentified. Essentially, having these AI assistants is so huge. It's just such a time saver. It can really increase what you can do, save time so much. I mean, just like even just some examples, like I can now, as a creative leader at my organization, when I show up to a meeting now, I don't come and like, we have a discussion about what I want. No, no, no. I just give them what I want. Like my agent has made what I want, and I give it to them. We don't have to have like months of meetings and discussions. It's like, here's what I want. Please make it. It could be like a design for an event. It could be a research briefing, a deck, whatever. I mean, that's just so huge. But I really think that the next level, maybe this is a good area to sort of conclude with, is like once you start using the thing, and that's step one, is like getting personal agents in the hands of all these people that need them, making sure they're secure, making sure there's at least an option for a privacy mode. I mean, this is key. But then it's like the organizational brain thing, and that was only, you can only really get there once you've done the first piece. So I built my own brain locally with my claw, right? It's like sitting here, so it has like I got 20 years of Twitter data, 20 years of emails, 20 years of annual reports from my organization, built a knowledge graph. I'm not an engineer, but like it's so awesome. You can just be like, hey, please research the best way to do this from these people. And then it just knows, and then it can do it. And then it's like, it's so cool. Now I can navigate my own evolution of thinking over 20 years, and I can figure out when I first met people and when I first had ideas, and I can see how things evolved over time. And it was a good little demo for what we're going to do next, which is what we're becoming an organizational brain, essentially, kind of following in the footsteps of the block hierarchy to intelligence idea. But it's like, yeah, in my on the Freedom Tech team at HRF, we're doing this right now. So it's like, first you build the brain, you load it with all the context. So 20 years of reports, achievements, as much as you can, interviews, voice notes, interviews from employees, so that it has all this information connected with these LLM wiki things, right? And then you just start uploading it. So end of the week, every week, an employee is going to leave a note. What did they work on this week? What are challenges they have? Every single all hands, that's the Google Meet transcript will go straight in. Slack channel achievements will go straight in. So this way, like me as the overseer, in 2 months, I'll just be able to say like, hey, what are we doing on our Bitcoin program in Africa right now? And it'll just tell me immediately, as opposed to me having to like have a meeting and like ask people. You can just start imagining how awesome this is going to be. And then maybe if we can get this throughout our whole org by the end of the year, it's like our president, she can just be like, hey, give me the annual report for this year, as opposed to the 4 month struggle it is to create one for an organization like ours typically. Um, so I think once you give the people in your org the power of these agents, then you can head more towards like essentially changing the hierarchy of your org towards intelligence. And I just think this is going to unlock a lot for smaller organizations, especially. And
Dude,
this is what might make it. We need the power asymmetry for AI to be sort of like cryptography, where it's like, great, Putin can like share a secret message with his daughter. Sure. But guess what? 100 million Russians can share messages that he can't see. Like clearly there's a power asymmetry there. It's benefiting the individual more than it's benefiting the state. I think that's what's going to happen here, because Putin already has armies, banks, lawyers, design firms, anything he wants, but the people don't. And now pretty soon the people are going to have all of that almost at their disposal, right?
I fully agree. I mean, this is such a great reminder for me of like why this is important. Thank you, man. I really appreciate your time. I think this is excellent as it is, and it's going to serve as like a good guide for a lot of people. Um, I'm gonna add the links to everything that you mentioned in the description, and hopefully we get to talk again soon.
Thank you. Yeah, everybody can check out